بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him send peace and blessing of his beloved and our beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A mu'min, a believer, is given a weapon, and that weapon is the weapon of dua. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he orders in the Quran, Ud'uni astajib lakum, ask and I'll reciprocate, I'll answer and I'll ask and I'll give what you ask for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased when we ask him, and is displeased that we stop asking him. Dua means to call out. And dua in the sense that in Islam, the way we use the word dua in general is that we make a request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the elect, for the special ones of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for them dua is about expressing their servitude, their slavery to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not necessarily to get the thing that they're asking for. And for the average person like us, that it is to, we're asking for something from Allah, whether it be for deen and dunya. And this is not against ikhlas, sincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves dua because in dua we actually acknowledge who we are and who He is. We acknowledge that He is Rabb and that we are the slaves. That we acknowledge that He is Rabb, He is the Lord, He is the provider, He is the creator, He is the ilah, He is the only one worthy of worship, the only one worthy of making dua to, and that we are slaves and we're in need. He has everything and we have nothing. And we are fuqara to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what a faqir means. Someone who's a destitute is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dua exemplifies that. Dua creates an image of that. Dua shows that who we really are. So when we don't do dua, then and we avoid dua, or we leave dua for a very long time, then for a very long time we're not showing that we are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even salat, the meaning of salat is dua. The meaning of salat is dua. So there's a hadith, ad-dua huwa al-ibadah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the translation meaning dua, that actually is ibadah, is worship. The dua is ibadah, is worship. And there's another narration is weaker but very similar meaning. The chain narration is weak but expresses dua mukhul ibadah. The dua is it could be translated as the essence of ibadah, worship. The heart of ibadah. Literally if you translate the maghaz. Now if you translate that, the marrow or the brain or the core, but it wouldn't make sense in English. But it's the essence, it's the core of worship, is that where through our dua we acknowledge who is Rabb, who is the Lord, and who is a slave, who is the one that is in need and who is the one that can fulfill the needs. It corrects the relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if it's 5 minutes we spend in dua. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was making dua, and he told us so many places. We can go through the books of dua. It mentions all the times and places where du'as are accepted. Throughout the day, obviously in tahajjud time, before fajr, in the last third of the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, as the hadith mentioned, Allah descends to the sky of the world, and Allah asks, is there anybody that has a need that I may fulfill? Is there anybody that is seeking forgiveness that I may forgive him? Allah asks. All the king's doors, all the palaces, they're closed. Shopping centers are closed, the shopkeepers are asleep, generally. The whole world is shut down. But the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is open. The gates of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are open. And Allah is asking, is there anybody that has a need that I may fulfill it? Is there anybody seeking forgiveness that I may But most people are asleep. Most people are unaware. Or even if they're asleep, they're doing night shift and they've forgotten about, they're still in dunya even at that time as well. It's halal to do night shift. There's not giving fatwa against night shift. We've all done it. We've done night shifts, afternoon shift. In my personal opinion, the afternoon shift is the most un-Islamic one because it's just a killer. You get disconnected from community, you get disconnected from masjid, you get disconnected from everything. As my personal experience, doing afternoon shifts is bizarre. You live in a strange world. You're not living with the normal human beings. You're in your own bubble and you're missing a lot. But anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the night for sleep and rest and for ibadah. He's made the day for work. We should try to come to our natural order. So the dua is a gift that is given to us. We have access directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't put a lot of barriers sometimes in some cultures, Muslim cultures, we put extra barriers between ourselves and in our dua. Dua has to be a specific person, has to be make dua for us. Yes, pious duas are accepted, more likely to be accepted, people doing pious act. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam requested Umar radiallahu anhu to make dua. So this is something, when he's going for Umrah, he asked him requested him to make dua. So good people, we ask dua for. Parents, duas are very special, right? But don't put a barrier between your own dua that if there's so many extra conditions. Didn't Shaitan, Iblis, he made a dua, Ya Allah, give me a chance till Qiyamah. I hope none of you are worse than Shaitan. That I hope so. We know none of us here are worse than Shaitan. So we shouldn't put, if his dua is getting accepted, right? And then one narration mentions that dua, that certain people's duas are never rejected. One of them is a Mazlum, an oppressed person, even if it's a kafir, he asks, even if it's a kafir, a disbeliever, and he asks Allah, Allah will answer. There's no barrier. Think about that. So we shouldn't put extra barriers, unnecessary barriers. Yes, there are certain conditions, how we ask, there are etiquettes of how we ask, there are things that might stop the dua, like consuming haram. These are barriers between duas getting accepted, as there are narrations that about whose duas are not accepted. Right? So therefore, but shouldn't make it so difficult, make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inaccessible by saying that dua, you have put so many conditions and so forth to the point that it becomes out of reach. There's dua in your salat. I mentioned a few weeks ago in Juma that when you finish salat, this is a time when your du'as are accepted. There's a discussion among the jurists whether the dua is it after salam or before salam. Before salam, the dua has to be in Arabic, and preferably du'as from the Quran and the du'as of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We should make those because those are the most comprehensive, best du'as, and we should know those du'as. And there's specific du'as that have been taught to us to make at that point, that before salam. So one of the ulama was mentioning that on the way out, you finish, you come for the ibadah, you've left your work, you come for salat. Now at the end of salat, you're about to go out of the masjid, go back to the dunya, worldly life, whatever it may be. You're leaving the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the way out, take something for yourself as well. Here's something for the road. Make some dua for what you want. Here's a place to make it. You've done the ibadah for Allah, inshallah. You've done the salat, you've done the ruku, you've done the sajda, you've fulfilled the order of Allah on its time. For the men who've come into the masjid, prayed before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as you're leaving, on your way out, before salam, this is the preferable place to do it. That before salam, make some dua. Some du'as are taught to us, Allahumma inni a'udhuka min adhabi jahannam. Right? In the order of du'as tells you something. Oh Allah, I seek refuge from the torment of Jahannam, of hell. If we're safe from there, we are successful. Because there's only one other place to go to. It's Jannah. If we're safe from Azab Jahannam, we're going to Jannah, inshallah. So seek refuge from Jahannam. Oh Allah, seek refuge from the torment of the grave, the Azab of the Qabr. These are dua Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us at end of salat to do. Allahumma inni a'udhuka min adhab Jahannam, wa min adhab al-qabr, wa min fitnati mahya wal mamat. From the fitna, the trials and difficulties of this life and the death, or after death. And min fitna masih al-dajjal, from the fitna, the trial of Dajjal. Because many people who will go to check Dajjal or be in the time of Dajjal, they have to check. There'll be weak Muslims, weak iman, and they will lose the iman just for going investigating. They'll become his followers. They'll accept him as a god. Allah save us from that. So these are four things that we can seek refuge from, is dua of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another dua that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, before salam. اللهم إني ظلمت نفسي ظلما كثيرا فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت فاغفر لي مغفرة من عندك وارحمني إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. That, oh Allah, I've done a great wrong to myself. We've done salat. It could be a perfect salat, full concentration, full heart and mind, presence in salat. And that just before salam, you're ending it, you're saying, oh Allah, I have done a great wrong to myself. And no one forgives sins except for you. So forgive me. As such a forgiveness, and have mercy upon me. And you are the most forgiving, and you're the most merciful. This is a dua that was taught to, it wasn't taught to, like sinful people like us. It was taught to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, the best Muslim after the Prophets, alayhimus. The best person after the Prophets alayhimus. The best Muslim on the face of the earth after the Anbiya alayhimus. This dua has been taught to him, radiallahu ta'ala an. And there's a dua, one of ulama, this dua is the Quran, right? The dua of Ibadur Rahman, the slaves of Rahman. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. When the Shaykh said, I make this dua every salat before salam, oh Allah, he's requesting for that make our spouses, our wives, spouses, and our children, the coolness, our progeny, the coolness of our eyes. And make us imams for the muttaqeen, for the righteous, the God-fearing. Leaders for the muttaqeen. And he said that I seen the effects of this dua for 30 years making this dua. As Allah showed this dua true in my lifetime, that I saw that my children, my wives, my children, they are coolness of my eyes. And if they're not, then some children are, they can be azab for the parents. They can be kafara. There was one brother, his son was, he said to, he was causing issues. He goes, this son of mine is making me famous. Not for good reasons. So every time there's a complaint going to the father about, he said to the father, this guy's making me famous. All the things that he gets up to. But anyway, so dua is something that we've been gifted with. Especially the du'as of the Quran, the Anbiya alayhimus salam. The Prophet's du'as, they're not like formulas, like just a series of words. They're not just like a series of words and a formula you can just reel off. You have to understand this is coming out of a human being. And from a very special heart, pure hearts. The hearts of the Anbiya alayhimus salam. They're coming out of very special people and very special conditions that they're in. The hal, the state, the spiritual states that they're in. The nearness to Allah that they have. They're making those du'as. Now just think, Anbiya alayhimus salam's du'as and the words that they're choosing to talk to Allah with. One of my teachers, Mufti Ubaydur Rahman, Bukhari teacher, he said that, how do we make dua? Ya Allah, Ya Allah, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this. We're giving orders to Allah. It's not a dua. It's not a supplication in the truest sense of a request from Allah. We're giving orders to Allah. Ya Allah, give me this, give me this, give me this. And Ya Allah, if you don't do this, I'm going to go to something bad. So we're now putting conditions that if you don't do this for me, then I'm going to do, that's not a dua. That's not a dua. But du'as are du'as of the Anbiya alayhim salam. We learn from their du'as. We learn from their words. We learn how they talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Sulaiman alayhi salam, the dua that he made, قال ربي أوزعني أشكر النعمة التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي ونعمل الصالح ترضى وادخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. That Allah include me in your slaves, the righteous slaves. Is a prophet who's a king, Sulaiman alayhi salam. He's telling, the previous part I won't translate because due to brevity of time, that, oh Allah, include me in the pious ones. A prophet is saying, include me. We pray one Juma, slap a sticker, mashallah, I'm a good Muslim. And we'll let everybody else know as well. Something we're supposed to do anyway, it's fard on us. We're supposed to do anyway. He's a prophet of Allah, who's a just king, and he said, Ya Allah, include me from the righteous. Make me one of the righteous salihin. You're not, I'm one of them. Put me amongst them. You see this in the dua of Anbiya alayhi salam. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, Khalilur Rahman, the friend of Rahman. Not Allah, not who's the friend? Ibrahim alayhi salam's friend. Allah has announced that Ibrahim is my friend. Not Ibrahim alayhi salam is announcing that Allah is my friend. If we lost respect for our presidents and prime ministers, let's say the prime minister, not that it's worth anything now, he says, so and so is my friend. Is a difference between that than you saying the prime minister is my friend, isn't it? This is a worldly thing that we can understand, example. But in these days, I think no Muslim will want to say out loud, the prime minister is their friend. Does he invite you to his $4 million house on the cliff? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that Ibrahim is his friend. He's a friend of Ar-Rahman. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made him his friend. Ibrahim alayhi salam, after a lifetime of da'wah, building the Kaaba, what is the dua that he makes after building the Kaaba? رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ minna innaka antas samiul alim. Oh Allah, accept this from us. Do you understand what these words, like we said, like sometimes we say these words or read it and we don't understand what Ibrahim alayhi salam, like accepting, I've done my job, like this is how we sometimes we perceive it. Ya Allah, this is not deserving of acceptance unless you accept it. It's nothing, it's zero. If Allah doesn't put his stamp of qabuliyat, acceptance on it, it's irrelevant. It's zero, it's worth nothing. It could be a calamity, it could be a sin. Ya Allah, accept this from us, and you are the hearing and all knowing. You know what our intentions are, and you know what we've done, and you can see everything that we've done and hear everything that we've said and done, and how we've done it. With what ikhlas that they made, Allah knows. That Allah gave it such an acceptance till now. It's our qibla, isn't it? It's our qibla. Green Street, isn't it? That's the qibla that points to Makkah. Is that right? It's right along the street. No, I make in Doncaster where I do imamat, like so. I tell when the Christian group comes, I tell George Street, because it's such a long street. I said this goes straight to Makkah. So every time you're driving along it, so they just plant the seed in their mind that when you're driving along George Street, it's a very long street. This is always that's facing directly to the qibla, to the Makkah, all the way. If you keep going straight, you go to the Ibrahim alayhi salam's, the house of Allah that he built in Makkah Mukarramah. So they have to, every time they drive George Street, they have to think about the Kaaba and Islam, inshallah, hopefully. So Ibrahim alayhi salam does the work, but the dua that he makes of acceptance is a dua of extreme humility. It's a dua of a prophet, right? And the du'as of the Anbiya, Ayyub alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam's dua is mentioned in the Quran. So in Nuh alayhi salam, it's nearly a page. Surah Nuh, in the second last juz, if you read it, it's more than a page, his dua, page and a half almost. Asking for the destruction of his nation. And not just this is after 950 years of da'wah. It's not a small thing. And for a Nabi to make dua against his people is like making dua against his children. Because he's been not sent for their destruction, he's been sent for their hidayah. And he has to make a dua, raise his hands and ask Allah to destroy his people. And he gives a reasoning at the end of the dua, read the dua, why he wants his nation. He said, they will only beget who will also do kufr. And the few Muslims that have become Muslim, they'll mislead them as well. That's the situation that he's come to after 950 years. He didn't make a dua against them on day 1 or year 100. 950 years of da'wah, then he's raising his hands, destruction for his people. But how he asks, what he's presenting before Allah. Right? And this is another thing. When we make dua, we restrict Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power to our haja, our need, the thing that we're asking for. We limit Allah to our problem. The problem in our dua is bigger than Allah. We wonder why our dua is maybe not accepted. Because it's not just what words that you use, it's how you ask as well. It's how we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the problem we make so big that it's as though Allah's qudra is not bigger than that. Number one. Number two, we present our asbab, our means, as though that Allah is restricted to them, that He needs them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give izzah in the means of zillah. Isn't it? That in the means of the world of, you would think that someone we saw this in the last week, I don't have to go to the news, how someone can give izzah against all odds. The media machine, everything applied. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written izzah for somebody. Not Muslims and non-Muslim. And the izzah comes to pass. Because He's the mu'izz. And He's the mudhil. He's the one who gives izzah and He's the one who gives humiliation. Nobody else can. Somebody can be sitting, how many kings are there? They're hated by the ummah. By this ummah. Not in one country, in the whole world. Isn't it? With all their money, with all their power, all their control, everything, there's a nafra in the heart of the mu'mineen for them. They can't buy that izzah. Izzah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He puts izzah, covers people with izzah. And He's the one can cover. Allah save us with humiliation. And Allah doesn't need anything or anybody to give izzah or zillah. He doesn't need anybody. He directly can give hukam. Somebody could, in all the means and the image of failure, covered in dust and injury, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make a hukam, a decision, give izzah to somebody. And you can't stop it because it's Allah's making decision. Allah will make it come to pass. So, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, his dua, Sayyidina Ayub alayhi salam, his dua, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, his dua. Du'as are there in the whole Quran. And our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's du'as, he's taught to us how to make dua. That when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His names. We are taught in the Quran to call Allah by His beautiful names. Those names are the ones that correct. They correct our way of asking. If we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and call Allah by His names, reduce the effect in our dua of what's outside, of our needs. That the dominant, our needs, our hajat, our necessities and needs of life, the things that we ask in dua for, that we reduce the effect of that, and the effect of Allah's greatness is more through His names. We isolate ourselves with the names of Allah. When we're making dua, we're only making dua to one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we're making the dua, we're cutting off even our hajat is pushed to the side. That this is not greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our needs are not greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the means are not greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't present our means, our asbab. For example, if we have a shop, we want to do a business and have a shop, and we build a shop. If we say, Ya Allah, I made this shop, put barakah in it. I made this shop, put barakah in it. Is Allah going to put barakah because you have a shop? Isn't there like billions of kuffar that have shops as well? Barakah is for a mu'min because of his piety. But if we present our piety to Allah, our actions, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Oh Allah, we only worship You and we only seek help from You. We only worship You, then we asking help only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You pray 2 rakat salat and present the 2 rakat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, pray 2 rakat. Ya Allah, on the barakah of these 2 rakat that I've done for Your pleasure, Ya Allah, You put barakah in my shop. Allah doesn't care you have this dunya or have a lot of dunya or less dunya or more dunya. These are irrelevant to to making dua to Allah and asking Him. You're impressed by your shop, and that's what you present to Allah, as though Allah can only give you through your shop. And Allah is not in need of your shop. That's asbab. That's not the hajah being fulfilled. So we present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our ibadah. The du'as of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maulana Manzoor Nu'mani rahmatullah, great alim. He read this book on Aqidah, very small book, like a modern, sort of, we could say, contemporary work, recent last 50 years, book on Aqidah. But in that there's a part that he mentioned, because whenever I want to refresh my iman, I read the du'as of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because those du'as came from a very special heart. Just imagine, somebody today we're doing courses on empathy, and how to, to be a normal human being, I guess. I don't know what there's courses on. There's training, for imams and so forth, to be more empathetic and to be more sympathetic to people. But the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, can you imagine how much empathy and sympathy, what type of person he was? Like we try to picture, all the hadiths of his the rahmah, because Allah is a rahmah that is gifted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how his du'as, what feelings those du'as were with, that's how he's talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these du'as that are there in the Quran and in the Sunnah, they're not just, just like words in a book and just formulas to reel off. We have to actually stop for a moment and think what is being asked for and how it's being asked. Try to picture how these du'as, like Yunus alayhi salam in the belly of the whale. He's making dua. He's not asking, Ya Allah, save me, save me. What's the dua that Yunus alayhi salam, La ilaha illa ant, subhanaka, inni kuntu min az-zalimin. That's the way he's made. That's a dua that Allah saved him with. It's a dua. It's a call to Allah, because dua is a call, as I said in the beginning. La ilaha illa ant. There is no one worthy of worship except for You. It doesn't look like a dua to us the way we understand dua. Subhanaka. Glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that You're free from all. It's very hard to translate these things. Subhanaka. like you're a pure being that is without any aib, without any deficiency, any flaw in yourself, in your decisions, in your law, in your Quran, in yourself. There's no deficiency. Subhanak, you're pure. Generally translates glory to you, but that doesn't really give reality what subhan. Inni kuntu min az-zalimin. Indeed, I am from the wrongdoers. I am from the sinful ones. That's a dua. Where you in dua, you admit who Allah is and you admit who you are. That's why Sayyidul Istighfar is a dua that Rasulullah ﷺ taught us to say every morning and evening. And if you die in the night, when you've recited this dua, you die, you go to Jannah. Right? One dua. Once, and the main line of it, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, in the commentary of Kalim al-Tayyib, Wabil al-Sayyib, it's a very beautiful book on dua. Wabil al-Sayyib means the torrential downpour. I like Kalim al-Tayyib on his teacher, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah's book on du'as. And in that he mentions why is this dua? It's called Sayyidul Istighfar, the leader, the greatest istighfar, the master of istighfar. Because the main line in this is Abu laka bi ni'mati alayya wa abu bi dhanbi. Oh Allah, I confess my sins and I confess your bounty upon me. From your side is perfection. Admit who Allah is and everything from his side is good. Wa abu bi dhanbi, and I confess my sins, my wrongs. La ilaha illa ant, subhanaka, inni kuntu min az-zalimin. So you find this throughout the whole Quran, and so in all the du'as you find this. To admit. And these two things, if they come into a heart, last point, they said to me 3:15, the Arabic inshallah will start, so I've got 2 minutes. You find this, that this is, through all the du'as, you'll find this idea. And if you have this, you know haya, we say haya is shu'batun, haya, modesty, is a branch of Iman. And the khuluq of Islam, the character of Islam. What haya is this talking about? Is it a haya that you can speak in front of people, not in front of people, you can't talk? Haya is talking the real haya, which is very hard to see. Is the haya that a person has when he thinks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From his side is perfection in his decisions, in his giving, in himself, and from our side is deficiency. Then these two things, when they come in the heart, they connect in the heart, right? Then a sense of shame comes over a person, haya comes. Like if you're next to your mother in the car and something is wrong happening. What's the thing stopping you from saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing? Or things that you wouldn't normally do. My father, rahimahullah, used to sit in my dars in the masjid in Doncaster, where he was imam. And so I would never talk about Hur Ain when he was alive, the women of Jannah. You know, it's like a little bit weird. So in front of your father, you start describing women. He's a woman of Jannah, it's halal, and so forth. But, you know, you feel a sense. What is that sense? It's haya. But this haya comes because this person has so much ihsan on me. He had so much kindness on me. Then I would not do anything to disturb him or annoy him. Right? Do you understand? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave our parents to us, gave our house to us, gave everything to us. I feel a sense of shame as a Muslim. I'm supposed to haya. This is the haya. That his ihsan on me is so much. How can I disobey him? And from my side is all deficiencies and flaws and broken ibadah and so forth. So dua is that gift that has been given to us. It is a weapon of the mu'min. 20 years ago we were told, don't say, someone Shaykh told us, don't say weapon of the mu'min. Say the tool of the mu'min. This is like, we were self-censoring after September 11. We were self-censoring ourselves so hard. Because don't say the weapon, say the tool. No, it's a weapon to defend yourself against your enemies. And the enemies of the ummah. And raise your hands for the Muslims. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, qunut has been prescribed for us. When Muslims are in trial and difficulty, when calamities come on the ummah, it's prescribed to us to raise. They're not just empty words going to thin air. Yeah, you don't have to televise your la'nat. You know, there's guys in England getting in trouble because they like videoing their la'nat, their curses. Yeah, because you're asking Allah, He can hear you. The dua is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, these du'as, we are given different place. In Juma is one of the days with the Imam. There's difference of opinion when after Asr the time dua is accepted. When the Imam is in the mimbar between the two khutbahs, at this time dua is all the dua of Juma is accepted. This is a day of dua. This day we should capitalize on these things. After Salat, dua is accepted. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Do the ibadah, present the ibadah of Allah. Do ibadah for rida Allah, then ask your needs from Allah at the end of the fasting. Why are we making dua at iftar time? You're doing the ibadah the whole day. Iftar time, make dua. Dua is accepted. Special places, special times. The books of du'as have details in them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we say in here. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. You're the Muslim. First azan. Yeah, inshallah. First azan? Second azan. So we're going straight to. Okay, let me go up in the minbar.